Something that has affected us, something that has brought us to where we're at. And I told the guys who were up here, you only got a few minutes, so focus in on your experience. We don't want a lesson on what the word salvation means, or just tell your story. So my story is kind of broken down into marker points. The first marker point is when I found the truth. When I found the truth, I was about 28 years old, and I was living in the world. And I could take up a half hour to tell you what that's like, but many of you have lived in the world, you know what that's like. So, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So, okay, I was living in the world. And it dawned on me in the middle of all that drug-induced haze that Jesus was God. Now, I grew up in the Catholic Church, I was an altar boy, went to school, Catholic school. I taught religion in school, blah, blah, blah. Jesus, the Son of God, Mary, I did all of that stuff. But this realization was like a thunderbolt, like curtains opened up, like I could see so clearly, this guy Jesus that I've known about all my life, he's God. And it just blew me away that I couldn't get around it. And so that sent me on a voyage to find out, okay, now that I know that, so what? What am I going to do with that? And usually people tell their conversion stories, they go from A to B, the next day this happened. Well, the next marker point didn't happen for like a couple of years. So there was still a lot of wandering going out. Some of you know this, I just packed a bag, grabbed the guitar, headed west, across Canada on a train. And my final goal was to go to San Francisco and record some songs that I had written, and just, who knows. And then through a whole, again, it's too long a story, but I found myself back in Montreal. Still, Jesus is God. I didn't know what to do with that. And then one day, I was sitting on the couch. It's like a bad song. I was living on my cousin's couch, looking for a job. And I opened up the local paper there. And it wasn't like the Daily Oklahoman. It wasn't even like the Choctaw News. It was even a couple of notches down from that. It was just ads and, stuff like that. Free paper that they threw in your apartment building, 50 of them stacked on the floor. If you want one, take one. And I opened that up, and there was a little column there that said, "Sinners are welcomed at the Church of Christ." And that was like, wow, sinners are welcome at the Church of Christ. And it dawned on me, that's me. That's exactly me. Everything I've been doing that I couldn't quite put my finger on, that's what it is. It's sin. That's what I am. I'm a sinner. And I went to this congregation, small congregation, 30-odd people or so. And I've told this story before. I did like everybody else does, who doesn't really know anything, who's never read the Bible. I just came to visit, and I just sat in the back. And I remember keeping my sunglasses on through the service. And there was a lady there who was very kind. She was a Caribbean lady, Emmy Brown, and she sat next to me, and she held the book. I didn't know what to do. I'd never been to a service like this. I was Catholic. In the Catholic Church, you don't talk, you don't sing, you don't move. You get up when they say get up. You kneel down when they say kneel down. You sit down when they say sit down. And you're just waiting for a certain word in Latin, because when I was a kid, it was all in Latin. You're just saying a word in Latin. You were waiting for the priest to turn around and go like this to the congregation, because that meant it's over. So I had no idea what was going on in this Church of Christ place. People were talking to each other. They were singing. It was all very strange to me. And she says, well, after it was all over, she said, will you come back? And I said, well, maybe. And she says, well, if you come back, look for me. Okay. So more time went by, and again, it's not an unusual story. We've seen it here, so many people who've come. I came a couple of more times. I got friendly with the preacher, a guy named Jim Metter. He said, hey, how about a Bible study? Okay. And he taught me, and I had questions. And the difference between him and how I had been raised was that every question I asked him about anything, he simply said, oh, wait a minute, that's in Acts chapter 3. Next question. Oh, wait a minute, that's in Matthew chapter 2. That's in Mark chapter 10. He never said, well, I think and I believe that, or the church says. It was strictly, his Bible would just go there, there. And I remember saying to someone, someone at work, I'd finally gotten a job and was getting on my feet and so on and so forth, and I said to someone, you ought to be baptized, because they've been teaching that where I go, you ought to be baptized. And on my way home, on the bus, on the way home, it dawned on me, wait a minute, you haven't been baptized. Why are you telling this guy he ought to be baptized? You haven't been baptized either. And that night, on a very cold November night, Jim Metter and another fella called them up, and I said, okay, I think I need to be baptized, and I was baptized. And it was very cold. They didn't have heated water there. Boy. So that was the second marker point, finding the truth so clear, and then finding salvation and being a member of the church, and then finding a ministry. That's the third point. In Montreal, those of you who have gone, Montreal is an island, and in the middle of the island there's like a mountain. I mean, it's not like the Rockies, but it's a fairly high mountain, so that if you go up on the lookout, you can't see the whole city around you because you're not on the peak. But anyways, if you go to the lookout, you can see about half the city, and it's like for miles. You can see for miles. And if you go at night up on the mountain, all you see are like hundreds of thousands of lights just spread out as far as the eye could see. And I remember after I'd been a Christian for a while, I remember going up on that mountain to show somebody something. We used to take people there who were visiting the city. It was one of the spots, And I looked out, and it dawned on me that in every one of those lights, represents a house. And in every one of those houses, there's a television. And if I had the opportunity, I would find a way to get in every single one of those houses in order to teach them about Jesus Christ. And that's when I found my ministry. My ministry, I found it on the top of Mount Royal. And so when I went to college to train for ministry, my degree was in missions first. That was my major, missions, because I wanted to learn how do you build a church from the ground up? How do you build a church? And how do you help a church to grow? But my minor was in mass communications, radio and television. How do you use the media to preach the gospel? And so from the very beginning of my conversion, I have always tried to use the media to convert people. I actually began with a telephone, 24-hour helpline, telephone. Preach the gospel to you 24 hours a day. We had members manning a phone inside the building on a schedule 24 hours a day, so that if anybody called, we'd put an ad in the paper. And if anybody called, there'd be a live person saying, Christian Lifeline. That's what it was called. And that kind of, evolved into something else. I remember the first year we got 100,000 calls. There was even an article about us in the big local paper, 100,000 calls. and I was sold. So for 35 years now, everywhere that I've gone, if you ever wonder, what's the big deal about the studio and why is he always pushing this? It's because from almost the year that I was converted, I dedicated my ministry to promoting the gospel to people using the media. So it's evolved all the way to today. BibleTalk.tv is 35 years worth of experiments to finally find the latest technology to bring the gospel not into just every house in Montreal, but now we have the potential to bring it to every house anywhere in the world. So that's my story.